Good afternoon to all of our participants joining in from India and, of course, from various parts of Nepal. And welcome to this conversation on converging potential. We're really thankful to each of you for sharing your precious time with us this afternoon. Since it's 3 o'clock on the dot, I think we should respect each of our time and kickstart the presentation on time. My name is Prashant, and I represent a company called Sapiens Agri Business Consulting, and we are headquarters are based in Bangalore, and we have our operations across the Asia Pacific region. And I'll be sort of emceeing and holding this conversation together. I'll do a quick introduction about Sapiens and, of course, the company that we represent called Allura in this region. Sapiens and Allura have a strategic partnership in the Indian subcontinent. So I'll quickly talk about these two companies and then introduce our really esteemed panel of speakers this afternoon. And of course, without further ado, pass it on to our speakers, and then we get started and kickstart this conversation. So essentially, the agenda for today is as follows. I'll briefly talk to you about our purpose, introduce our strategic partner, Allura Animal Health, who is the ones hosting this webinar. And then, of course, introduce our two speakers. And we're really covering two really important and I think extremely relevant topics this afternoon. The first involves nutrition and metabolizing peak performance with a miracle metabolite of cholecalciferol, which we fondly know as alpha D3. And then, of course, something which is extremely relevant, I hear, in this age and time. And we're really proud and happy to have a very senior person, Dr. Sudhir, with us today. And we talk about managing Newcastle's disease in poultry. So that's the broad agenda. And we'll kickstart talking a little bit about Sapiens and the company that I represent. So we at Sapiens believe that healthy animals are really the cornerstone of a healthier society. And our mission is to make high quality protein affordable and accessible to all. This is a belief that's very firmly held. And we are also very happy to have one of our directors, Mr. Ashok Arur, who's a very senior person, been involved in the poultry industry for well over 45 years. And he is one of the cornerstones of Sapiens. And we're really happy to have him as well. And he'll address the gathering towards the end of our presentation. So that's in a snapshot, a little bit about Sapiens. So we are an agribusiness consulting firm, and we work with animal health science companies and protein producers, really helping them realize their true market potential. How we do it is we work with animal health and science companies, providing them not just strategic advisory and consulting services, but also help them in terms of having strategic partnerships, for instance, with Allura, and have these partnerships facilitating business opportunities and unlocking potential for them. And of course, working very closely with farmers and protein producers, helping them by providing them the right expertise, bringing them access to cutting edge innovation and technology from different parts of the world, which have been cherry picked and brought to our protein producers. That will really help them unlock and realize their true potential. So we really work in between our two primary stakeholders, animal health science companies and protein producers, helping each of our stakeholders really unlock market potential. So that's the role of Sapiens. What I'm really excited to talk about today is one of our strategic partners, Allura Animal Health and Nutrition. So Allura Animal Health and Nutrition are the ones who are hosting this webinar this afternoon. Allura, just to say a few words, is an organization which is headquartered in the United States and is an organization which is science-based, working really at the cutting edge of science and innovation. And in India, Allura really wants to stand for just one thing, which is driving performance through innovation. And in the Indian subcontinent, in India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh, the portfolio of products that we have and we're bringing to our customers in the subcontinent really focuses and drives home this point of driving performance through innovation. The organization has its presence in over 30 countries. We have our manufacturing operations across the Americas, North America, and South America. As you can see, we have a couple of R&D hubs, predominantly one in North Carolina, where a lot of our innovation in biotechnology space happens. And we have collaborators and partners across the country. So this is our global footprint, and we're really proud of our global heritage, our American heritage, and of course the fact that we're able to bring these cutting edge innovations to customers across the world. So a lot of what Alura is all about in terms of its innovation comes from the Innovation Lab or its research heritage. And the Alura Innovation Labs is based in North Carolina. And in fact, this is a picture of North Carolina, and we are based in what we call the research triangle of the United States, in between three of the most respected biotechnology research universities anywhere in the world, being Durham or Duke University, that's one, North Carolina at Chapel Hill being the second, and Raleigh or North Carolina State University being the third. So this is the research triangle. And this is where a lot of the new biotechnology research and innovations are really happening. And this triangle is known for the world's cutting edge biotech, animal health science research. And this is where it happens. This is where the magic is created. And that's where Alura is headquartered and based. Our research heritage continues by the partnerships, and through the partnerships we have from across the world, whether it's the University of Georgia, through which partnership we were able to create this product that Dr. Sanjay will talk to us today about, called Alpha D3, or whether it is some of the more respected universities, Singularity, the University of Illinois, and of course, all of these research universities that you see on your screen. We work continuously with them in furthering research and furthering technology and bringing to our customers the absolute best. A little bit about our portfolio. So Alura Animal Health and our portfolio in the Indian subcontinent is really divided into two portions. We have products and we have programs. Under products, we have products based in these three criteria: nutrition, food quality, and biobalance. What we're going to talk to you today about is really one of the products in our precision nutrition portfolio called Vitamin Alpha D3. And of course, some of our most innovative products are really within the biobalance portfolio, whether it is bacteriophages that we're working on and other cutting edge innovations that we're bringing to our customers. On the right-hand side of your screen is something that we're really proud of, which is our programs. And we have programs which are a combination of products and services, a combination of services that not just include analytics, but also involves data analysis and farm management techniques. So it's a combination of products plus services all coming together. And these are the three different types of programs that we have. The first is performance and conditioning, really helped at least in the poultry sector to really enhance the performance and longevity of our flock. Precision control being really to control what is in our hands, which is essentially controlling outbreaks of pathogenic bacteria and so on and so forth. And lastly, of course, is data and intelligence. We have a sister concern of ours, a company that Alura owns, called Asymmetrics. And Asymmetrics is one of the foremost organizations in the world working on machine learning, artificial intelligence, and bringing the power of data into the farm and into the palm of our customers' hands. So those are essentially our products and our program portfolio. And this is, in a nutshell, in a very quick summary of Alura and our portfolio in the Indian subcontinent. Our speakers today, the first speaker is someone whom we're really proud to have with us. is Dr. Rukadikar. Dr. Rukadikar is a leading poultry consultant who works across the world. He's worked in Asia, he's worked in Europe, in Africa. He has over 36 years of experience, was recently lauded and applauded for his services to the poultry industry and specializing in disease management technical services. And today he's going to talk about something which is very relevant to us, which is essentially in managing Newcastle's disease that is affecting our poultry flock. Our second speaker is a veterinarian and a technocrat, Dr. Sanjay Satbai. He's the area manager for North and West operations for Allura Animal Health and Nutrition. And what he's going to be talking about today is about alpha D3, the miracle metabolite of D3 that helps maximizing performance by optimal calcium and phosphorus absorption. So he's going to be talking about something extremely relevant. And finally, Mr. Arur, who is a partner with Sapiens, will add his closing remarks and the word of thanks. What I'd like to do is introduce our first speaker today, Dr. Sanjay Sadbai. And Dr. Sadbai will talk to us today about alpha D3 and the miracles that lie within. So, Dr. Sanjay, over to you.
Thank you, Prashant. Good afternoon to all and welcome. So, I will present the miracle metabolite. For better signal strength, I will stop my video and I will share my presentation.
We can see your screen, Doctor.
Thank you, Prashant. Good afternoon to all. It's a really pleasure to be here sharing with you metabolizing peak performance. And thank you very much for your presence. Poultry industry is a growing industry and it is growing consistently year over year. And it is registering average growth of 10 to 15%. And we are very proud that we are contributing to the protein industry. And importance of protein industry, everybody knows during this challenging situation. So poultry industry is facing a lot of issues, especially health issues, diseases. There are seasonal variations and there are biosecurity challenges. But in spite of all these challenges, there is a major challenge which industry is facing. And that challenge is achieving the peak performance and maintaining peak performance. So today's broiler is registering a growth weight of 2.2 to 2.5 kg in just 35 days with FCR of 1.58 to 1.6. But if I compare today's broiler with the broiler which I reared 25 years ago, today's modern broiler has done a lot of improvements. And because basically improvement in weight gain, improvement in MCR, improvement in reduced number of days. And this happens because of continuous effort by the geneticians, continuous effort by nutrition, and continuous effort in improvement in the management. So in that sense, if I compare today's broiler with 25 years previous broiler, today's broiler is taking 25% less time to rear. And it is having very good FCR, improved FCR, and it is having very optimum weight. So this is the improvement in the broilers. In case of layers, these genetic advances have increased the hen house and hen day production. And by increasing hen house and hen day production, it is directly impacting on the economics, farm economics. In case of breeder, number of hatchable eggs per bird or number of chicks produced by the per bird are increased. So there are a lot of improvements because of the genetics, management, and nutrition. But as there are improvements, there are challenges also. So today's modern broiler, it is having a lot of issues, especially with the mobility and bone structure. So these fast growing broilers, having with the very fast growing rate, are having more porous and less mineralized cortical bone. So cortical bone is very
Uh, I think we're having some technical issues. Dr. Sanjay, are you still with us? We can't hear you. Please bear with us for a minute or so whilst Dr. Sanjay just reconnects. Apologies for the inconvenience. Dr. Sanjay, are you back?
My voice is clear?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, my apologies because of connectivity issue.
Yeah, we can see your screen, doctor.
So can I repeat this slide or previous slide also?
No, this slide, this slide.
Okay. So this today's fast growing modern broiler and having very high breast meat and meat yield. So growth is there, and when there is growth and improvement, challenges are also there. So what are challenges? Challenges are these modern broilers are developing very mobility issue and bone structure issue, and the high growth rate or accelerated growth rate, these have make the bone very porous and less mineralized cortical bone. So cortical bone is it is a tissue having covering external layer of all the bones. So in the skeleton, cortical bone is very important, and femur is a cortical bone. So this is in case of broilers. In case of layers and breeders, there are soft shell or shell quality, and in case of layers and breeder, if shell quality issues are there, or broken eggs are there, or shellless eggs are there, there is definitely economic impact will be hampered. And in case of breeder, it is directly affecting the number of chicks per bird and hatching eggs. So these are the negative effects of the growth and development. So these challenges are preventing the bird's ability to perform at the optimum level. And because of the birds are not performing at optimum level, producers are not able to extract the full genetic potential of the bird. So solution, what is solution for it? So miracle is vitamin D. So vitamin D is a fundamental in metabolism of calcium phosphorus absorption. So it is a very crucial and very main important metabolite. And vitamin D performs important functions, primary as a main function, primary function, and secondary function. So in primary function, calcium and phosphorus absorption and cal binding synthesis. This happen in the intestine. So cal binding is, it is a vitamin D responsive gene, and it plays a very important role in maintenance of the calcium concentration. So it will transport calcium from gut to the other part of the body. Vitamin D plays important role in kidney, in calcium and phosphorus reabsorption. So vitamin D, it will convert into bioactive or bioavailable metabolite 125 hydroxy D3 synthesis. And in bone, the vitamin D play important role in bone formation, resorption of the bone. So there will increase in the osteoclast. So osteoclasts are the specialized tissue or cells required for development and new bone and maintenance of the bone strength. So these are the three important functions of the vitamin D in the intestine, in the kidney, and in the bone formation. So in nutshell, vitamin D is important for calcium and phosphorus absorption, calcium and phosphorus reabsorption, and bone formation and bone resorption. This it will give new bone and maintenance of the bone strength. Vitamin D is also important for other functions, which are, say, we will say other functions or secondary functions, which are immune system. So it is important in immunity, in reproductive function like sex hormone synthesis, uh, formation and maturation of the sperm, and there is vitamin D will help in insulin secretion. So there are vitamin D metabolites, but if we see this metabolic pathway of the vitamin D or cholecalciferol, this cholecalciferol is not available to the bird as it is. So this cholecalciferol or vitamin D, it has to go into hydroxylation process in the bird's body. First hydroxylation process is performed in the liver, and second hydroxylation process performed in the kidney. So we will see the metabolic pathway of the cholecalciferol. So cholecalciferol, which is a D3, it will enter in the liver, and in the liver, first hydroxylation happen on the 25 carbon atom. So this cholecalciferol D3 will convert into 25 hydroxy D3. But this 25 hydroxy D3 will not able to available, or it is not bioavailable form. So to convert into bioavailable form, this 25 hydroxy D3 has to undergo second hydroxylation. And this second hydroxylation will happen in kidney. And in kidney, with the help of 1-alpha hydroxylase enzyme, this 25 OH D3 will convert into 125 OH 2 D3, which is active form. In the kidney, which is second hydroxylation, this happen in the first carbon atom. So vitamin D3 will convert into 25 OH D3, and then again convert into 125 OH D3. And this 125 OH 2 D3 is a bioavailable for the calcium absorption and bone mineralization. If we see the efficiency of the liver is 95%, means it will convert 95% D3 into 24 OH D3, and there is 5% process loss. But kidney, if we see the efficiency of the kidney is having only 20% efficiency, means there is 80% loss, because kidney is a highly hormonal regulated organ. So this is a metabolic pathway, hydroxylation, and bioavailability and bioactive forms. So this liver is having 95% efficiency or 95% hydroxylation in the liver. There is conversion at the rate of 95%. But in the kidney, only 20% efficiency. It is very, very low efficiency. And if we see D3, it has to go to kidney and liver. And if we see another metabolite, which is 25 hydroxy D3, it will bypass the liver, but it has to pass to kidney. So there is only 20% efficiency. So what is solution? To overcome these inefficiencies, team of professors from the University of Georgia under leadership of Professor Dr. Hardy, they have researched in 1980s this molecule. In 1989, the alpha D3 received patent for this metabolite, vitamin D3 metabolite. And in 2010, Azura launches vitamin D3 in the poultry globally. And in India, we have launched vitamin D3, alpha D3 in 2010. So from 2010 to 2021, millions and billions of birds has been reared on alpha D3 in breeders. It is used in breeders, in broilers and layers, and producers have reaped the maximum economical benefit and return on investment by using the alpha D3. So this is a journey of alpha D3. So solution to the above problem, a very highly efficient alpha D3. So again, I will explain you the metabolic pathway. Alpha D3, it will, for first hydroxylation, it will pass through liver, where 95% efficiency is there. And it will not, no need to pass through kidney, no need to pass through kidney, because already hydroxylation has been done. It is partially activated. So alpha D3 will give you 95% efficiency. So I will explain you different metabolites and pathway and their availability. So cholecalciferol, suppose I am giving 100 units. After passing through liver, after first hydroxylation, this 100 units will become 95 units, because liver is having 95% efficiency, 5% loss. But these 95 units are not bioavailable. It has to go through kidney for second hydroxylation. So after passing through kidney, as kidney is having only 20% efficiency, these units become 19. Means in nutshell, I am providing 100 units of cholecalciferol. I am getting net 19 units. If other, we will see other metabolite pathway, which is metabolite is 25 hydroxy D3. I am giving 100 units. It will bypass the liver. It will not necessary that it will pass the liver, and 100 units will become 100 units. But these 100 units are not bioavailable. It has passed through kidney. So these 100 units will become only 20 units. Means 25 hydroxy D3 metabolite is super form of D3. It is nothing but there is a very marginal difference, 5% difference in between D3 and 25 hydroxy D3. Alpha D3, if I am giving 100 units, first hydroxylation happen in liver, there are 95 units, and no need to second hydroxylation. So I am getting net 95 units. Means if I am providing 100 units of cholecalciferol, I am getting 90 units. If I am giving 100 units of 25 hydroxy D3, I am getting 20 units. If I am providing 100 units of alpha D3, I am getting 95 units. It clearly proves that alpha D3 is 4.5 to 5 times more bioavailable than other metabolites available in the market. And this is having 95% conversion efficiency, while other metabolites are having 20% conversion efficiency. So this is a study I will present. This study has been conducted by Boris, Dr. Boris. On x-axis, there is D3 metabolites, dose nanogram per day. And on y-axis, there is TBAH. TBAH will represent the mineralization. So they have done analyze the TBAH in milligram. And if you see, at the same concentration, they have used D3, cholecalciferol, 25 hydroxy D3. There is another metabolite, 125 OH D3, and one alpha OH D3. If you see the TBAH with D3, it is very close to 190. It is 190. With 25 hydroxy D3, it is 210. And in case of one alpha OH D3, it is 230. There is a vast difference between TBAH percentage, which clearly mentions that by using alpha D3, there is proper mineralization. So we are getting highest TBAH, which clearly indicate that there is a proper mineralization. This study will reveals another important observation, because kidney is not able to modify its regulation of the other D3 metabolite. So this is another important conclusion this study will show. So I will present you some data. So these are the studies conducted on the ROS 78 male broilers on 28 days. There are 4 groups: control group, one group with 1 alpha D3, one group with 25 hydroxy D3, and another 124 OH D3. So body weight in control, there is 987 gram. With 1 alpha D3, 998 gram. With 25 hydroxy D3, 989 gram. With other metabolite, 977 gram. It clearly shows that body weight gain with alpha D3 is 998 gram. It is the highest. We have achieved highest weight gain with the using alpha D3 in case of broilers. If we see FCR in control, there is 1.27 FCR. If we are using alpha D3, 1.23. So there is a drastic or marginal reduction in the FCR. By using 25-OH-D3, 1.25, and by using other metabolite 125-OH-D3, 1.26. Means by using alpha D3 in case of broiler, we are getting maximum body weight and we are getting optimum FCR. Because this happens because in case of broiler, there is subclinical lameness present. Means if we enter in the farm, if we clap, the bird will run away. But there are few birds, they will run fast, and there are few birds, they will be behind them, and there are some birds they are lagging behind. So this lameness we will not notice by eyes. So some countries are analyzing the GATE score to demonstrate this. This is the reason where this lameness, subclinical lameness is playing the role. By using alpha D3, subclinical lameness is recovered, and that's why birds will eat more and birds weight gain will be highest with optimum FCR. So what are the benefits of the alpha D3? So in case of broilers, increase use of phytic phosphorus when along with phytase. So when you use alpha D3 in case of along with phytase, it will improve the body weight and FCR because phytase will release the phytic acid bonds with the phosphorus. So there will be more phosphorus, and alpha D3 will synergize effect. It will harmonize or it will be complementary effect with the phytase. Alpha D3 improves uniformity in the broiler farm. Uniformity is important for the farm economics and bird economics. So if uniformity is good, all parameters will be good. Alpha D3 will improve bone density and structure. So there will be minimum, there will be no subclinical lameness and improved GATE score. It will improve the mobility in case of broiler, which the birds will eat more, and there will be continuous, there will be no problem of the lameness as a subclinical lameness, and bird will register a good growth or in the case of weight gain, and they are having optimum FCR. By using alpha D3 in broilers, we will increase meat density. It will, by using alpha D3, it will decrease the fracture at slaughter also. This is a very, very important parameter in slaughtering because they will reject the bird if there is a fracture. And very important, alpha D3, by using alpha D3 in broilers, we will prevent the black bone syndrome. So majority of we are eating chicken, and sometimes when we eating drumstick, there will be black color. We will found black color. So what is this black bone syndrome? Black bone syndrome is nothing but leakage of the bone marrow content during cooking, and it is a clearly indication of the mineralization or calcification. So this bone marrow will come out of the porous, pores present in on the drumstick, and why when we are cooking it, it will become black. So this if there is a black bone syndrome, a processor like KFC or McDonald's, they will not accept the chicken. So nowadays, it is becoming awareness, and chicken with black bone syndrome is rejected. So these are the very, very important benefits of alpha D3 in commercial broilers. In case of layers and breeders, it will improve the eggshell quality, and by improving eggshell quality, there will be we are getting more number of eggs, more number of hatchable eggs, or more number of we will set more number of eggs in the setter. We will get higher production and persistent results. There is maximize the bone structure development. Their wellness will be of the hen by having a better bone structure. So there will be better bone structure. There will be no fractures, or during the flightness of the bird, there will be less fractures. There will be less mortality, and we will get more sellable eggs per hen house. And very importantly, it will increase the calcium reserve at the beginning of the production. So there will be no calcium absorption from the bones, and bones will not become fragile because there will be calcium reservoir in the bird. Lower, it will, by using alpha D3 in layer hen breeders, it will lower the rectal prolapse at the end of production cycle. So there are various factors associated with the prolapse of the bird, but by using vitamin D, as it will help for the proper skeleton development, because prolapse is related with the poor skeleton development. One of the point is poor skeleton development, and second point is improper calcium will relate or improper calcium will causes shell problem. So by using vitamin D3, uh, we can improve this to skeleton development and attaining desired body weight during 4 to 8 weeks and eggshell quality. So uh, this is the only product which has having very staggering return on investment. In case of layers and breeder, it is proved that return on investment by using alpha D3 is very, very high, 11.4:1. And in case of broiler, return on investment in broiler is 12:1. So it is the best product which is giving high return on the investment. So other benefits of the alpha D3, it is very, very synergistic and complementary effect with the phytate. Already I have mentioned this. Thermostable at pelletization temperature. So it is it alpha D3 withstand at the pelleting temperature, and we are having so many experiences continuously who are having pellet mill. They are using alpha D3 successfully from several years. Extensively studied product doses for optimum performance. So we have done a lot of research to find for optimum dose and performance, and it is proven that 12.5 grams of the alpha D3 pure and 250 grams of the alpha D3 premix dose is optimum dose, which will give you higher return on investment. So this is proven, and in case of breeders, broilers and layer, dose is 12.5 gram per ton of feed for the alpha D3 pure. And in case of breeders, broilers and layer, dose of the alpha D3 premix is 250 gram per ton. In case of broiler, alpha D3 is recommended in pre-starter and starter phase. Don't need to use in finisher phase because bone development will happen up to first 22 days. Alpha D3 will easily traceable because of its green color in the feed. So these are the very, very important benefits or other benefits of the alpha D3. This is the product on which high academic number of 40 peer-reviewed published reviewed articles or peer-reviewed articles and academic papers, clinical trial and test. So it is the only product extensively tested, peer-reviewed and clinically proven. So we are having 40 published articles, more than 40 plus published articles and academic papers, lot of clinical trials, field data, and lot of work has been done. Scientific work has been done, and it is the only product extensively tested and validated globally. So with this, I am completing my presentation. Thank you very much. Hello.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sanjay, for that extremely valuable presentation. We sincerely appreciate it. There are a couple of questions that I see. What we'll do is we'll answer all of these questions right at the end during our discussion. So Dr. Deepak and Dr. Nabraj, I appreciate your patience in this matter. We have received your questions, and we will be answering those questions right towards the end of our presentation. Now, for the most exciting and most awaited part of this afternoon's discussion, I'd like to invite our most esteemed speaker, Dr. Sudhir Rukdikar, to address the August gathering this afternoon. The stage is yours, Dr. Saab.
Thanks a lot, Prashant. I'm sharing my screen now. Do you see my screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, good afternoon. Namaskar. As Prashant has said, we are going to discuss something about Newcastle disease, which we are having for almost 100 years. And still, it's a headache for most of the countries in the world. Out of 195 countries, there are only 16 countries who have not reported outbreaks of ND. All other countries are definitely having ND with them. So we are having a topic of discussion ND and what are its variants in India and other parts of the world. So let us start with that. We know, as Dr. Sanjay also said, that there has been tremendous growth in global poultry industry. We see for last 30-40 years, there has been tremendous growth in multifold, like 10%, 12% every year. But during this phase of rapid expansion, certain regions have experienced dramatic increase in the incidence of infectious diseases. Outbreaks of the diseases is very common in this phase of expansion. But we should be proud that despite so many challenges the industry is facing, the poultry products, that is chicken meat and eggs, is the highest share of animal protein consumed globally. You know, in world, all the animals are eaten, not a single animal is left. But among the animal protein consumed globally, poultry products, that is chicken and meat, they command the highest share. So despite having so many problems, we should be proud that it is the best uh, product consumed, because our poultry is the most efficient animal which will convert protein from lowest feed intake. It has got the best feed conversion ratio. So lower feed intake, if Baujod, it will have a good body weight and good production. So the people throughout the world are having more consumption of this. But since it's a livestock, there are continuous threats of infectious diseases, and that is a high economic threat to the industry. If you see, poultry business, of course, it is not the business which can be run by sitting in one place and managing in other place. It needs 24/7 attentions. You cannot just leave it like that. So it's important to maintain the consumer confidence in our products, because last 1 or 2 years, the faith in poultry products has slightly shaken in some parts of the world. Maybe because of some uh, vested interests are creating that type of confusion. So we should be able to produce the chicken products with high level of hygiene and minimum use of antibiotics, so that we can maintain the faith or confidence of consumers in our poultry products. Now we know that the margins of poultry industry are going down and down, wafer thin margins are there. And that's why we need to be more vigilant. Even a minor mistake will lead to huge losses. So, and as Dr. Sanjay said, the genetic improvement is so much that the minor mistakes will magnify in the losses to a huge amount. And so we want to have a better performance for the better profitability. And as I said, it being a livestock, it is vulnerable to a lot of diseases, maybe infectious as well as non-infectious. Now, if you look at the economics, crores of rupees, a huge amount of money is spent every year in Asia to treat the diseases caused by viruses, fungi, bacteria, parasites. Huge amount, billions of rupees are spent every year. And despite prolific use, abundant use of best available vaccines, best available antibiotics, these microbial diseases still is a constant threat problem to the poultry industry. Why? Because one of the major reasons is the heavy bioburden. What is bioburden? The presence of disease-causing organisms or pathogens like viruses, bacteria, parasites, fungi. When they are there in the shade, it is called as bioburden. When the bioburden is unacceptably high, our shades are not sterile, we definitely have some bioburden. Even though the EC shades, they are not sterile. So the bioburden will be there. But if it is high, unacceptably high, it will be transferred from one flock to next flock, one batch to next batch. That's why heavy bioburden is very important. And once the population of these disease-causing organisms goes beyond acceptable limits, they can even break through vaccinated birds also. So many times we think that we have given good vaccine, but protocol was good, the timetable was good, why the vaccine failed. Of course, there are n number of vaccine failures, but heavy bioburden could be one of the factors which is causing outbreak of disease even in vaccinated birds. Now, increasing virulence of pathogens. Now, see, whenever there is war, the war is continuously going on between pathogens and the host. Maybe animals, maybe humans, maybe plants. So there are pathogens. So the continuous war is going on between pathogens and host. Sometimes the host will win, the pathogen will lose. But sometimes the pathogen will try to increase the virulence and take upper hand, like what has happened in case of COVID now. So the increasing virulence of pathogens will put increasing pressure on the latest vaccine strains. Every now and then the scientists in industry, they are behind finding newer and newer strains to give better and better protection. But when the virulence of pathogens increases, even the latest vaccine strains would not perform very well. And there is also growing level of public pressure to restrict the use of antibiotics. Now, you know, there have been so many articles published in so many media that so many antibiotics are used and such residues are found. So people are asking for low use of antibiotics only for treatment purpose and not for prophylactic use. So there has been pressure on that, and European countries have already banned it. In our countries also, slowly we are going to have that ban. So we should try to increase the hygiene of our poultry rearing. Once you increase the hygienic levels, it will have two benefits. it will reduce the challenge on existing vaccines and prolonging their useful life. So once you are having good hygiene, these newer and newer strains of virulence of pathogens will not increase. And so we can use the same strains of vaccine for a longer period. We can use prolong their useful life. And secondly, the antibiotics, which we have to use because of unhygienic conditions, could be saved for further longer use in case of humans as well as in poultry. So these are very important factors in case of farming. Now we know that poultry farming is no more a backyard activity for so many years. It's industrialized poultry farming. It's an industry now, giving uh, the employment to lakhs and lakhs of people. So the challenges also have become apparent. Not only the advantages of the industry, but some drawbacks are also there. So the challenges have been apparent. Now we go for intensive poultry farming. So this intensive
We seem to have lost Dr. Sudhir
I
Rukdikar.
I will call sir. I will call sir and inform.
Okay. We apologize for the inconvenience. Please bear with us just for a few more minutes while Dr. Rukdikar connects. Apologies for the inconvenience. Regret the same.
Prashant. Hello.
Yes, doctor.
Hello. Yeah, sir is joining within less than 1 minute because he's changing the net because
Okay,
he's facing
okay.
some issue with internet.
Sure,
So
sure,
he's
sure.
changing the net.
Apologies again, dear participants. Please allow us just a few seconds. Dr. Rukdikar is just momentarily joining us. Dr. Rukdikar, welcome back.
Sir, you are on mute, sir.
No, I'm a bit mute, but I was trying to see my way. Right.
Yeah.
Can you see the screen?
Not yet, sir.
Yes, sir.
We are extremely sorry for this disturbance. Of increased number of respiratory infections because of this industrialized poultry farming, which is intensive type of rearing. But there are certain factors which will pave the way.
Doctor, we can't see your screen yet. You might just want to share your screen again.
One just
Yes, we see your screen now.
Yes, sir.
Please,
Yes, sir.
please,
Okay.
please go ahead.
Okay. Again, sorry. So we were discussing about the predisposed these respiratory diseases and why they are increasing. There are certain factors which will pave way to the upper hand of the organisms, which are known as predisposing causes. The doctors, they know, everybody knows this term. So one is immunosuppression, which is a very important factor nowadays in humans also in this epidemic of COVID. We are listening this word again and again to maintain the immunity, the immunosuppression because of use of steroids and all that. So if the birds are immunosuppressed, they will be falling prey to immunosuppression. Dampness, more moisture in the shed, poor air exchange, poor ventilation, no poor supply of oxygen, leading to ammonia buildup, overcrowding, sudden changes in temperature, filthy litter. All these factors, if they are there, one or two or even combination, they will definitely pave way for the pathogens to cause the disease in the birds. So when we are thinking of any disease or respiratory disease especially, we should see that these factors are prevented or kept minimized so that the losses will be minimum. Now, what are the possible damages in poultry because of diseases? One is higher mortality. We know we cannot take the flock in 100% livability. There will be some mortality, but we have some standards that in case of broilers, till marketing, we don't want to have more than 4%. In case of layers, till laying, we don't want to have more than 4%. During laying, we don't have to have more than 6%. But because of the damages, because of the diseases, the mortality could be higher than what we're expecting. Drop in egg production. There is a standard curve of egg production, maybe in breeders, maybe in layers, but there will be sudden drop in egg production, maybe to the tune of 5%, maybe to the 50%, even 100%, depending on the disease. Then deteriorated external and internal quality of the eggs. We know the external quality of eggs, the shape and the calcification and the color of the shell. Internal quality, the thickness and thinness of the white or albumin. So that will be damaged. Reduced hatchability. If you are having breeders, you may get number of eggs, but the hatch percent will be less than what you are expecting. Poor quality chicks, because we say the sellable chick. What we want to get sellable eggs and sellable chicks. We don't just want the number of chicks. We want the chick which will perform good in the field. So the quality of chicks may be compromised. No consistency in egg production. You know, there is a graph of egg production. It goes up and slowly after peak it starts coming down. But there will not be consistency. It will be up and down graph. That is possible. Slow growth rate, especially when we are speaking of broilers. Now we know that by the end of second week it is 600 grams, by third week it is 900 grams, by fourth week it is 1400 grams. So we'll get the slower rate than this. So naturally we'll take more time to come to the market weight. And poor FCR. The FCR in case of birds, it is differently described in different types of birds. In case broilers, we say what is the feed consumed for production of 1 kg of bird. In case of layers, we say how much is the feed consumed for production of 1 egg. And in case of breeders, it will be how much feed per chick sold. So this FCR will be poor, it will be higher. So that is also possible because of these damages. So with this background, let us switch to our main topic of discussion, that is Newcastle disease. So everybody knows that almost 100 years ago, 95 years back, this disease was identified in Newcastle in UK, and it is worldwide in distribution. As I said in the beginning, out of 195 countries in the world, only 16 countries have not reported India outbreaks. Remaining 179 countries have reported India outbreaks. So that is worldwide distribution. Primarily how it spreads, it is a contagious disease. So it spreads from direct contact between healthy bird and the bodily discharges of infected birds, not necessarily infected birds. Like what we say in COVID now, don't touch the person with positive with COVID. So similarly here also we see the contagious thing, but here it is not only birds. Birds droppings, secretions from nose, mouth, eyes, all of they are having very high concentration of virus. So whenever healthy birds, they come in contact because all they are in the one shell. Intensive farming is there, especially in broilers, they're in deep litter. In case of layers, they are in cages. In breeders, some are cages, some are in deep litter. So when they are coming in contact with these bodily discharges of the infected birds, which are heavily concentrated with virus, these will get infected. So these are basically methods of spread. Now, what are the signs or symptoms of ND? They are highly variable because, as you know, ND has got its various forms: neurogenic and digestive form, and respiratory form, and reproductive form. So, the various highly variable symptoms you can see, and again they will depend on other three factors. One is the nature of the infecting virus, how much virulent it is. If a person coming with 50 kg body weight and gives you a punch, and the person coming with 70 kg and gives you a bunch, there will be a difference. So, how much is the virulence of a virus? How much the infective dose, whether 10 million particles have attacked or 10 billion particles have attacked, and how much the bird is already experienced with the virus earlier, maybe because of vaccination or maybe because of earlier disease. So these factors will decide how much serious the problems will be or how much serious the symptoms will be seen. But they will vary depending on whether the virus affects the respiratory system, digestive system, nervous system, or reproductive system. Morbidity is usually high. Almost 100% birds show the problem, but mortality will vary. If it is a very mild asymptomatic form, leprogenic virus, the mortality may be zero despite outbreak of RD. And in very virulent form, which is VVND, viscerotrophic velogenic form of Newcastle, there may be 100% mortality also. So especially the birds are not vaccinated and they are affected with virogenic form, you will definitely see almost 100% mortality. So this is a very serious matter in case of ND. These are some of the symptoms. Torticollis or twisting of neck. Sometimes it is known as stargazing because the bird looks like it is looking at the stars. So this is generally not seen in acute phase of disease. When the birds start recovering, when the mortality stops and recovery starts, then many times you see this type of picture, which is very typical of ND. Of course, in certain other cases also, sometimes the neck gets paralyzed. And in that case, you may see, but mostly this type of picture is in the recovery phase of Newcastle disease. Now, this is in case of digestive system. You can see here, this, of course, you know, these are cecal tonsils. Intestine, cecal tonsil, and colon, sorry, rectum, colon. So here, what you see is the cecal tonsils, which are highly ulcerated. If you open them, you can see this type of picture, which is a generally indication of ND. Of course, any disease cannot be 100% confirmed only at the field level. We need to take help of laboratory where it is possible, so that we can confirm that this was the only virus and nothing else, because it can have similar problems with other diseases also. Then you can see the hemorrhages on the tips of proventricular glands. You know, the proventricular surface is not flat. There are small glands over there. On the tips of glands, you see this type of hemorrhages. I will show one more photo also, which is clearer than this. This is generally an indication of ND. But sometimes, instead of these tips, you can get the hemorrhages in between or at the base of these glands. That is not in case of ND. It is generally in case of toxicity or IBD. You can get that, but when you get on the tips of glands, it is ND generally. Then in the respiratory form, the upper picture what I'm showing you is a trachea which is normal. It is white, not red, not highly mucus. But in case of ND, it could be congested or even dark red like hemorrhaging. But it is confusion with AI. I'm going to cover that slide. But in case of ND milder form, it may not be very severe. The upper picture is showing you a normal trachea, white, without any color, without any mucus, much mucus. And this congested trachea may be giving you indication that it could be ND. Again, this is not a pathognomonic lesion. Even in case of severe form of E. coli, you may get this type of mild tracheitis. Then other picture what I told you about proventriculus, you can see very clearly. It's mainly it is on the tips of proventricular glands. It is not on the proventriculus and gizzard junction. It's not on the base. It is mainly on the proventular gland. Sometimes the gland is thickened, and in the wall also, you can see this type of hemorrhages, which is a clear indication. And this is little severe form of ND, wherein you see necrotic plaques or ulcers in the intestine. You cannot remove this. If you remove this, the intestine will tear out. So this is a little severe form of ND, wherein the mortality could be higher. This type of ND, the mortality may be 5%, 10%. But this type, if you see the picture, many times the mortalities could be leading to 50%, 60% also. But sometimes it is very difficult to distinguish very virulent Newcastle disease from avian influenza. Nowadays, AI cases are again increasing in different parts of the world. So when it is very virulent form of ND, it is really, really difficult to identify or differentiate it from avian influenza. In case of Newcastle, if you are giving very severe depression, if you are having inappetence, the birds are not feeling hungry, they are rejecting feed. If there is severe drop in egg production, and if there is sudden, after this, if there is sudden deaths in the flocks, we can suspect AI. It may not be virulent Newcastle disease, it could be AI. It's really difficult because many times these two come together and diagnosis becomes difficult. And that's why I said that the diagnosis in field sometimes is not confirmative. It's a tentative diagnosis. And if possible, we can get help of laboratory to see whether they can isolate the virus, characterize it, and confirm that this was the virus. Now there are different variants also. We were speaking of only ND, but now last so many years, almost 15, 20 years, we are seeing different variants. So what are those variants? These are different genotypes. Long ago, if you see almost 25 years back, it was only genotype 2. Then it came genotype 7. And now we have genotype 13. Actually, there are up to genotype 18 are there. In the African countries, you get even genotype 12, 14, and 18 also. What we see in Asia is genotype 13, but it's not only in Asia, it's Asia, South America, and South Africa also. This genotype 13 was previously genotype 7 itself, what we were facing earlier before emergence of genotype 13. It was classified as genotype 7 only, and these contained the viruses, virulent viruses, which were isolated from the outbreaks in Russia, Iran, and Pakistan between 1995 and 2008. So basically, it's a genotype 7 with some more characteristics added, and that's why it has become genotype 13. But as I said, it's not in India or Nepal or Bangladesh. It's there in Asia, South America, as well as South Africa. So when we are discussing about ND, we should consider genotypes also. Now, when we're discussing vaccination, I'll tell you about what vaccine to be used over there. Now, when we think of treatment for viral diseases, we know there are no treatments, whether it is a poultry or humans. In humans also, if you get herpes virus infection, or if you get jaundice, you don't have treatment for that. Some herbal treatments, some desi treatments we're trying, but there is no treatment. If the mortality is very high, we can use Lasota through drinking water, or parenterally, we can inject Lasota. I have been doing this injecting Lasota practice since 1986. So sometimes if the mortality is high, injecting double dose of Lasota parenterally, subcut or intramuscular, gives stops mortality within 24 to 48 hours. But this can be tried only if the mortality is very high, like 1.5%, 2%, 3% every day. If you're getting just 0.1, 2%, this is not required over there. Then control the aerial load of these viruses, we have to spray certain virucidal drugs. And even in drinking water, we give them. Now these drugs which should be used are, I think, containing potassium monopersulfate. Triple salts of potassium monopersulfate containing products can be used. And the most popular product, of course, you know, is Vircones. So similar products can be used in drinking water and can be used in the spray type. Only one caution I would like to tell you in different meetings of doctors, in companies, in farmers meetings, I tell you same thing. Whenever you are spraying, the quantity of water, what you use for spray, your product may be very good, your dilution rate may be perfect, but if the water itself is less, the quantity of the chemical also proportionately becomes less. So how much water is to be spread in the shade is very important. So with the presence of birds, the quantity of water for spray is 8 liters per 1000 square foot. That is very important. So if I'm having a shade of 5,000 square feet, the water for spray in the presence of birds will be 40 liters, 40. And then if I'm using a product with 5 grams per liter, I have to use 200 grams in that. So unless you use this much quantity of water, the product will not work and you will not get the desired results. And then drinking water, of course, whatever dose is recommended, we can give. And many times, whenever there is virus infection, there will be secondary complications with bacteria. So some antibiotics may be needed. Generally, as we know, E. coli are the most complicating bacteria. We always call them opportunistic bacteria. So they may be there, or maybe some other bacteria, even sometimes Clostridia also take upper hand. So we may have to use some antibiotics to control secondary bacteria. But what is important is we should prevent the stress on the birds, see that the birds are having good ventilation, see that water is very clean, and the spray. These are very important. And then, of course, the feed has to be little fortified so that they can recover a little faster. Now, when we are speaking of disease, prevention is better than cure. That is always we say. A stitch in time saves other 9. So prevention is better than cure. So there are some factors which are very important. We are going to discuss one or two factors in detail. First is thorough cleaning and disinfection between the flocks. Because I said in my very third or fourth slide that heavy bioburden is one of the reasons for these increased outbreaks. When these number of these pathogenic bacteria crosses acceptable limits, it can cause failure of vaccine in vaccinated birds also. Secondly, if the disinfection and cleaning is not proper, the same infection is carried from flock to flock, batch to batch. And that's why between the flocks, the cleaning and disinfection has to be very thorough scientific. So we should clean as per the scientific protocol, and then there is the disinfection. Now disinfection, again the same point of how much water to be used. If you are having thermal fogging, it's a different story. We are doing fumigation, it's a different story. But if you're spraying certain products in the shed as a terminal disinfection, you know there are two terms. One is known as terminal disinfection, one is known as continuous disinfection. So if you're using some chemical spray for terminal disinfection, again the quantity of water is very important. It's 5 times than what we said about the shed with the birds. For empty shed, for every 1,000 square feet, we need to spray 40 liters, 40. I said 8 liters for the shed with the livestock, with the birds, but for empty shed, it is 40 liters per 1,000 square feet. So for 5,000 square feet, you will spray 200 liters, 1 full barrel of water with sanitizer, and then only it will try to reduce the bioburden to minimum possible level. So that is very important. And then of course the terminal disinfection ke baad you have to go with the continuous disinfection. What is continuous disinfection? Spray at frequent intervals in the presence of birds. So by looking at the risk involved, you can decide whether you need to spray every week or every 3 days or every alternate day. You have to decide. But that looking at that, you have to select the molecule, what is to be sprayed, decide the frequency, and then spray it with 8 liters per 1,000 square feet. And that has to be a continuous disinfection, so that you continuously keep the bioburden under control and it will not take upper hand to cause the disease in the birds. Quarantine, of course, the birds which are introduced in the shed from outside, like if somebody is having growing birds, grown-up birds, because in case of layers, this is a practice to purchase started pullets of 14 weeks, 15 weeks, 12 weeks. So if you're introducing new birds, they have to keep quarantine for maybe 2 weeks. If there's no disease, no problem of health, you can introduce the flock in the normal shed. So that is one. Biosecurity, again, very important term. Now again, in case of COVID, last 1.5 years, people have started discussing biosecurity in humans also. We are using mask, we are cleaning our hands on and often, we are keeping distance. Then after coming out from outside, we are immediately removing clothes, mask, putting it in hot water. So all these things are like biosecurity. And poultry, of course, we have been following biosecurity for almost last 50 years. But it was not very serious till we experienced Gumboro in 1992-93. After Gumboro, we have learned something about biosecurity. Then again, people were a little lenient. Again, in February 2006, AI was diagnosed in Navapur of Dhulia district in Maharashtra. Again, this biosecurity came. So we must try to implement biosecurity measures as much as possible. Control on the movement of men and materials, continuous disinfection. Then whatever material we need to take inside has to be sprayed and taken inside. The persons inside coming inside should remove their shoes, put on new slippers, dip in the food dip and then come inside, then spray on themselves, put hand sanitizer. All those things are very important for any disease, not only ND. All in all out as far as possible, because if there are more number of age groups, the disease is likely to keep on rolling from batch to batch. So all in all out, of course, layers, it is a bit difficult, but in the case of broilers, all birds of one age, maybe in the area, maybe in a span of 2, 3, 4 days, we can place the birds. Within the next 4, 5 days at the time of liquidation, same thing, 4, 5 days we can liquidate. So all in all out is a good practice. Then immunosuppression, I told you, one of the reasons for causing respiratory diseases is immunosuppression. So again, immunosuppression is a very big topic wherein I can speak for 2 hours, but immunosuppression to be prevented either through feed or through managemental mistakes or through biosecurity. All this immunosuppression has to be prevented. And then the vaccination, which is the most important part, because vaccine, if you look at the production cost, the cost of vaccine is the lowest, but the impact is the highest. So while selecting vaccination, we should be very careful. And again, while administering vaccine also, we have to follow the protocol, whatever is described. Now, there has been evolution of ND vaccines over the years, last almost 100 years that is going on. So as we said, 1926, it was the first description of ND. We said it was there in Newcastle, so we call it Newcastle disease. In 1930s, that is after about 4 or 5 years, they started studying the attenuation of virulent ND virus. Because whenever it is outbreak, it has to be virulent, otherwise there won't be outbreak. So they started to reduce its virulence, that is attenuation, in after 4 or 5 years. Then another decade, they searched mesogenic strains and Hitchner's B1 strain and Lassota strain. Mesogenic, of course, you know, R2B and D53, they are mesogenic strains. Then Hitchner's B1 and Lassota. Then 1970s, they went to thermostable strains. Of course, we in India, we have got thermostable strains only last 10 years or so. But in 70s only, in European countries, they started with thermostable strains. Clone vaccines in 1980s. Now we are also having clone vaccines in India. Many clone vaccines are there. Then vector Fowlpox-based ND vaccines in 1990s. Because, you know, when we say vector vaccines, we use another virus, which is a bigger virus, and introduce a part of ND virus into that. And then that is used as a vaccine for FP as well as ND. Or now, after FP, now the latest is vector HVT-based ND vaccines. So Fowlpox-based ND, Fowlpox vector vaccines are not working now. Better now people are going for vector HVT-based ND vaccines. So we see again what is that. So prevention of ND with only one shot of vaccine is not very effective. Even in broilers, just one shot of vaccine is not effective, whether it's live or inactivated. One shot never works. If at all there is no infection in the area, absolutely, it may work, but that is not the case. It's omnipresent virus. A combination of live and killed vaccines has been practiced for a long time. So one live and one killed in case of broilers. And in case of layers, of course, there are many lives and 2 or 3 killed vaccines. In breeders, so many killed vaccines come. So that was a combination of live and killed for long. But a new factor came into consideration, that is maternally derived antibodies, MABs or MDAs. So they interfere in the antibody production when you give live ND or killed ND vaccine. So again, this MDAs was a major concern. So if there is a high level of maternally derived antibodies, it may interfere with the development of good antibody titer. It is detrimental to good titer. So even though your strain is good, you are following good practice, cold chain, everything is done, dosage, there is no compromise on dosage, your feed is good. But if there is high level of maternal antibodies, they will think this to be an enemy and try to neutralize it. So once the antigen is neutralized, there won't be any antibody production. So you get lower titers and not expected protection level from same vaccine if the maternally derived antibodies are high. And that's why this concept of vectored vaccine has come up. It could be a major step in new strategies to prevent ND. Because in case of vectored vaccines, HVT vector now they are coming. So this antibody MDA level doesn't have any impact on the antibody production, whether they are high or low or zero. With this type of vaccine, they don't have any impact of MDAs. So slowly people are shifting to vectored vaccine, HVT vaccine for prevention of ND. So this has been a major step in new strategies for prevention. Now this technology gives you good protection against Newcastle disease in the presence of high level of MDAs also. and against variant ND genotypes also. But one thing you must remember that when you're using HVT, generally this is recommended at 1 day of age in the hatchery, whether it is a broiler or breeder or layer. It is given at day 1 in the hatchery, and this is like Marek's disease cell-associated vaccine. This is also Marek's virus only, because you know HVT, herpes virus of Turkey, it's again for Marek's. And so this vaccine is a cell-associated vaccine, which is stored at -196 degrees in liquid nitrogen. So procedure you think thawing and then bringing to normal temperature, dilution, and then injection. So only that 1 day vaccine doesn't work because it takes some time to develop antibodies. It takes almost 25 days onwards, it will be almost full seroconversion. But to produce local immunity, because we need some local immunity, when the virus attacks, it will generally enter through respiratory tract or through conjunctiva. So there has to be some local immunity to stop the virus over there, because systemic immunity, humoral immunity will take longer time. So we have to go with one live vaccine. Maybe at hatchery, they can do some spray vaccine, or at the farm, maybe a regular schedule of 4 or 5 days with live ND vaccine, they can go so that local immunity is produced. And this vaccine by about 25, 26 days will have full conversion of seroconversion and get good titers. Now, these are different ND virus strains used in vaccination. Every virus virulence is decided on a factor called as ICPI, intracerebral pathogenicity index. And another is, of course, mean death time. That is a different story. And all these viruses, there is one gene bank for these viruses worldwide. And whenever they are deposited in that, there are gene bank accession codes are given to them. So these are different viruses: Lassota, Clone 30, F strain, B1 strain, R2B, D3, D58, D53, D58. So these are different. As you know, you can see the ICPA values. The lower the ICPA value, safer is the vaccine. Lassota has got little more of 0.4%, sorry, 0.4 ICPA. F strain 0.25, B1 0.20, and then D58 0.14. So these are little milder vaccines. And there is one more, Clone 79 from Hipra also, I have not mentioned it here. That is also 0.15. So people try to go for a vaccine with low ICPA, but they should not be something like 0 or near 0, because they will not have any pathogenicity as well as antigenicity. So people go with the vaccines with lower ICPA value so that they are safe to use and they will not cause much disease. But R2B, if you see R2B vaccine, it's a very high ICPA value, but still it is used. It is a hot vaccine. We use it in breeders and layers, not in broilers, because it's a mesogenic strain. So if you use lentogenic as well as mesogenic strain, you are giving wider coverage to your flock. And that's why you should always try to include it in the vaccination schedule. Like IB also, we say that you should try to include as many variants as much possible so that it gives broader vaccination. Same thing here. In case of ND also, you can go for little more vaccines. So with this background, let us have some points to prevent respiratory disease complex, not only ND. Because now what happens is, many times, the disease occurs not as one entity. It's always a cocktail. So it's a mix. That's why instead of any particular name, like CRD or RD or IB or APMV, they say RDC, respiratory disease complex. So certain factors, if you see, they can prevent RDC, including our ND also, what we are discussing now. As I said, good cleaning and disinfection of sheds between the flocks, very important thing. Continuous disinfection to keep the bioburden under check. Prevention of immunosuppression. Now, immunosuppression, the causes could be managemental, causes could be environmental, causes could be infectious, causes could be nutritional. So we have to take care from all the fronts to give the balanced feed so that there is no much imbalance between the different vitamins and minerals. Try to protect the birds from environmental extremes. Try to put the managemental practices in best way to prevent the strain or stress on the birds, because stress is the highest, most important factor causing immunosuppression. So overcrowding causes stress. And then keep the environment well ventilated, clean and dust free. Why? Because all these diseases respiratory. They will be gaining entrance through eyes or through eyes means it will go to again sinuses, to nostrils, through beak, and then going to upper respiratory tract and deep below. So if it is well ventilated, naturally they will have more oxygen. No ammonia. Ammonia will, of course, you know, high ammonia will put a lot of damage of the trachea because it produces ammonium hydroxide. So a lot of tracheal damage will be there. Naturally, the first line of defense itself is gone. The trachea, ciliary movement won't go, ciliary stasis will be there, and these will go inside. So keep good ventilation, good oxygen supply, clean and dust free so that it doesn't enter the respiratory system and cause the problems, and keep stress to minimum, because that's the most important factor to prevent immunosuppression. Then vaccinate, of course, as we said, vaccinate. But it has to be tailor-made vaccination schedule and is to be religiously followed. Vaccination schedule cannot be blanket policy to entire world at a time. For every poultry belt, the vaccination schedule will be different. We vets, we try to study the cases, what was the vaccination schedule used on this farm, whether they faced any problem, if yes, what age, what were the consequences, and then what are the surrounding farm's history. Considering all these things, we will design a vaccination schedule which needs to be religiously followed. So we call it a tailor-made. Like tailor, you go to tailor, he will measure you and stitch your shirt, which fits you. So we will design the schedule which will fit your farm. Quarantine the new birds, as I said, before adding to new stock, original stock. We should keep them in different shed for about 14 days and then take it inside, like we are quarantining for COVID positive patients. Separate sick birds, if any, to prevent the spread of the infectious disease. Because if we are putting the sick birds in the flock itself, whether they are in cages or in the deep litter, they become source of infection to other birds. So slowly it keeps on spreading. So we separate the birds. And then we must keep a very strong immunity of the birds. Nowadays, if you know, for this COVID also, people are asking to go for vitamin C, B complex with zinc, and all those factors they are trying. Then take turmeric milk to increase the immunity. So, like we had Chyawanprash. So Chyawanprash, what it does, it gives you general immunity to fight against so many infections. Because we are having infections surrounding us, we must be able to protect ourselves from that. Similar thing for our birds. So we must make the birds strong immune from inside to fight all the possible infections. They can defend them, so they can fight existing, emerging, re-emerging diseases. And in this, vitamin D plays a major role in production of very strong immunity. Dr. Sanjay Sadbhai has already mentioned it in his alpha D3 presentation. Vitamin D plays a very major role in production of very strong immunity. It enhances the utilization of phosphorus and calcium bound to fight it. He has mentioned that use of, if you use alpha D3 with phytase, it will more phytic phosphorus can be used. So when you are having a good quantity of vitamin D of good quality, it will enhance utilization of phosphorus and calcium bound to fight it. So with more phosphorus will be released and you can use less phosphorus in the feed. Higher phosphorus will leach in the feces and it will contaminate the environment. Pollution is there. So lower phosphorus can be used if you have a good vitamin D, as well as other minerals like manganese, iron, copper, and zinc, which all play very important role in immunity of the birds. And similarly, vitamin D is involved in the development of cell-mediated immunity in chicken through its role in the maturation and proper functioning of the macrophages. So vitamin D, what he said is very true for proper mineralization of bones is very important. Besides that, in the immunity development also, by sparing some phosphorus, other minerals, and then by maturation of functioning of lymphocytes and cell-mediated immunity, it will definitely help to give a very good, strong immunity to the birds, which will overall use to fight. So what is our take-home message? Although a burning issue, Indian chicks can be prevented. No doubt it's a burning issue. And nowadays, many cases, it's a mixture of so many things, and so the mortalities are very high, like 20%, 30%, 50%. But we can prevent it by best biosecurity. That is most important. You should not allow anybody to come to your farm. Neither you should go to any farm. Then balance feed so that immunity is good developed. Birds are well grown with a nice frame, nice feather coating. Good management. What I mean by good management, minimum stress on the birds and use of best quality vaccines. Vaccines, of course, there are so many vaccines. I don't know how many of them are available over there in Nepal, but best quality vaccines are available. Only the quality of vaccine or the name of vaccine is not enough. If you are going for a live vaccine, the cold chain maintenance becomes very important, because I have seen in many farms, they are well managed farms, but cold chain maintenance is not very rigidly looked into. At many points, the cold chain breaks, either in transporting vaccine from shop to farm, taking from freeze to flock. While reconstituting, many times they take the bottle from freeze, but the diluent is somewhere outside. Then while administering vaccine, they break sometimes in between for tea or snacks. And then the cold chain breaks. So you have to see that all those factors are properly taken care of. When you're putting eye drop in the cheek on the say first day or fourth day or fifth day, you should wait till the eyes are blinked once, because when you put the eye drop and leave the cheek, it shakes the head and the almost 50% vaccine is gone. You can put the newspaper and start vaccination. After 50 birds, you will see the entire paper is wet, and that water is coming when there's a vaccine water, and that means you are vaccinating the litter and not the chicks. So take care to see that the bird just blinks once eyes so that it goes. It takes hardly 1 or 2 seconds. So for even 5,000 birds, you may have to spare maximum 1 more hour. So those are very important. Same thing when you are giving vaccine through drinking water. All those protocols, like how much water you should give so that it is consumed in 30 to 45 minutes. It has to be completely chemical-free water. No chemicals in the delivery system anywhere. Add the vaccine stabilizers like those blue coloring powders and tablets. And then you have to, of course, you have to chill it and then add the vaccine and then give it so that it is consumed in 30 to 45 minutes. All that protocol has to be followed. Cold vaccines, you should not freeze them. You should keep them in the fridge or somewhere in the cool temperature. You should not freeze them. Otherwise, the inversion breaks. Then you have to bring it to body temperature before injecting. This is the most common mistake I've seen in big farms. Before vaccination, they just take vaccine out 1 hour before vaccine from the fridge and start injecting. That is not there. If you are having plans to vaccinate today, yesterday night itself, you must take it out and keep it outside. It should come to normal body temperature and then you should inject. Otherwise, there will be cold shock to the birds. And then don't compromise on the number of doses anytime, because killed vaccines are very expensive. So people think I have got 1,200 birds, I get only 1,000. Why I should take for another 1,000? Don't do that. Killed vaccines, you can use them till the expiry. See, live vaccines, once you open and reconstitute, the life is only 2 hours. But killed vaccines, if you open it and without contaminating, you take it out by sterile syringe or pour it and again close it, you can use the remaining balance till the expiry date. So don't compromise on the number of doses. So all these things are important in case of vaccines. So with all these things, I think we should be able to control ND, to prevent ND and increase our profitability of the farm to the great extent. So thanks a lot for your kind attention. Now it is open for question and answer session.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ruktekar. So thank you very much. What I'd like to now do is, open up this entire thing for a question and answer session and a discussion across both speakers. Dr. Sanjay, if you're with us, I'd like you also to join. I know we've received a few questions, so I'll kickstart this with the questions that we've received. Most of these questions are directed at Dr. Ruktekar. I think there's one question from Dr. Deepak. I think he's asked several questions. One of these questions is, do we advise to use liquid calcium supplement for commercial broilers? When is it advisable to use? This was, I think, very early on in the presentation. So either of you who'd like to answer this, please kindly go ahead.
Dr. Sanjay or me?
You, sir, please.
Please, sir. Please, I think Dr. Ruktekar, you should answer this.
Dr. Deepak, you can use calcium supplements in the broilers also. If you are sure that the lameness is there because of calcium deficiency or poor mineralization of the bones, then only you can go for calcium preparations, because lameness in birds could be because of nervous origin also, wherein you need to go with nervine tonics. But if you're sure that it is because of the calcium deficiency, we can definitely use liquid preparations as per the dose recommended by the manufacturers. But see that they are used for 3 to 5 days, not only for 1 day. And they are not used as prevention, they used as treatment. That is very important.
Thank you. Another question from Mr. Nabraj Shrestha. This is, I think, for Dr. Sanjay. How can we differentiate lameness in broilers if it is due to calcium deficiency or due to vitamin D deficiency?
So basically, vitamin D is responsible for calcium and phosphorus absorption. So simple way, if like we are loading the bird, live bird, and we are carrying it from shed to vehicle. So sometimes there will be breakage. So maximum times it is because of vitamin D, and by using the alpha D3 in feed for one batch, and by keeping the record, and by avoiding this loading at the time of loading, there will be tibial dyschondroplasia. So we can overcome this, and definitely it will prove that it is because of the poor calcium and phosphorus absorption, and vitamin D, alpha D3 will help him to absorb this.
Thank you very much. Another question, what can be the possible best way to treat the farm once ND is confirmed?
Basically, once there is any infection, we have to go for a rigorous disinfection and cleaning. Now, generally what happens is, if it is a bacterial infection, we can go for shed monitoring and testing the laboratory. But it's a bit difficult to see for virus infection. But as I said, there are so many chemicals available in the market. They can disinfect the sheds, but you have to go with whatever is the recommendation. And if there was a serious problem, we can go even 2x. If they say 5 ml per liter, we can go for 10 ml per liter also. But only thing, as I said, if you are going for any method, see that the quantity is used looking at the volume of the shed or area of the shed, so that it will have really impact on the infective agent. Because as I said, for empty shed, I said 40 liters per 1,000 square feet. If you're using only for 20 liters, proportionately the disinfecting chemical also will be 50%, and then it won't be able to kill the viral load. So there is a scientific protocol for disinfection and cleaning that has to be followed. And then, as far as possible, if there was an outbreak, you should not place any chicks for minimum 3 weeks, if possible 4 weeks, and then you can place next batch of them.
Thank you very much. Another question is, what is the dose of Lasota vaccine for parentally?
Actually, what I told about parental dose is only in case of severe mortality of ND. If you are sure that the ND has caused the mortality, why I'm using the word, because nowadays it's a big confusion between AI and ND. Because in AI, if you use Lasota, the mortality could be 100%. But in case of ND, if you are sure that it was ND, I recommend double dose of Lasota to be injected. Now, how it is to be done? If you are having a batch of say 1,000 birds, you have to go for 2,000 doses of Lasota. Now, when they are bigger birds, not like just 1 week or 2, if the birds are more than 1 kg or something, generally we inject 0.5 ml per bird. So we can get 500 ml of normal saline, chill it, and then reconstitute 2,000 doses in it. So 500 ml chilled diluent is having 2,000 doses of Lasota. When you inject 0.5 ml, you are injecting to 1,000 birds. So 1,000 birds are getting 2,000 doses. So that way it is supposed to be injected. And since you have to handle the birds, you must give some anti-stress preparations also through drinking water.
Thank you very much. A question from Dr. Dinesh Kumar Yadav, who asks, can we vaccinate with F1 at day 0, since we cannot know the level of MDAs in them?
We can go with any vaccine at day 1, to be frank, but the recent findings are the MDAs, if they are high, they will interfere. Actually, F1, B1, as I showed in my slide, they are having very low ICPI. So intracerebral pathogenicity index being very low, they're supposed to be safe vaccines for day 1 also. It should not be a problem.
Thank you. A question for Dr. Sanjay. What is the dose of alpha D3 in the broilers and breeder feed?
Dose of alpha D3 in broiler. We are having 2 products. Alpha D3 pure. It is used at 12.5 gram per ton of feed in pre-starter and starter feed. And alpha D3 premix 250 gram per ton of feed in pre-starter and starter in case of broiler. In case of layer and breeder, alpha D3 pure 12.5 gram per ton of feed, and alpha D3 premix 250 gram per ton of feed.
Thank you. Another question from Dr. Deepak is, for commercial broiler farm, open shed, dipleter system, please suggest anti-vaccine schedule. I think Dr. Saab already answered that there's no one size fits all. But if it's possible to complete a schedule that you suggest, as you are well aware of the Nepali poultry industry, and all the aspects are the same as cold chain, several thawing and freezing procedure. Do you see any ration or relation of ND with COVID? That's the follow-up question.
Basically, as I said, we have to go with a killed vaccine even in broilers around the year. One concept earlier also, now also many people feel that use of ND killed vaccine in broilers should be only for hot season or summer season. That is not the case. If you go for round the year ND killed vaccine, no, not only it will give you prevention of ND, but other respiratory diseases are also much lower. This is practically experienced. So as far as possible, I would suggest to go for a killed vaccine in the hatchery, or if it is not possible in the hatchery, at the farm level, or vector vaccine if it is available. It can be used in the hatchery. Of course, I don't know the cost; it must be very high. And one live vaccine at the either at the day one or at the farm around 5 days. Then, if you have having history of ND around it or very high risk, I would suggest one more ND live vaccine around 19 days of age. So that will complete the vaccination schedule. If you are going for a vector vaccine, then the day one vaccine and day 5 vaccine, that is enough. If you are going for killed vaccine, then one killed vaccine and two live vaccines, one on 5th day, one on 19th day. That should take care of complete broiler schedule. But your second question is, I think there is no relation between India and COVID. So, because basically COVID, as you know, is a coronavirus and this is paramyxovirus. The structures are only thing similarities, they are coronaviruses, but otherwise, sorry, RNA viruses, but otherwise there is no any similar. Even our coronavirus of poultry is different from coronavirus of humans because you know IB infection in poultry is because of corona. But the sites of attachment are different. The site of attachment in poultry is ACH1, actinogen converting enzyme, ACE1, and in case of humans, it is ACE2, actinogen converting enzyme 2. So the viruses are different, although they are corona. And so ND is altogether different vaccine. Virus, it is a PM1, paramyxovirus.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saab. Another question, is that torticollis seen in viscerotropic form?
Pardon?
That's the question.
Okay.
Is the torticollis seen in the viscerotropic form?
Not necessarily. Actually, it can be seen in any form. And as I said, the virulence will be different even for same virus. The virulence will be different in different, mesogenic will be different, and viscerotropic will be different. But torticollis is not 100% seen in all the cases. Wherever the virus was a little stronger and the mortality was a little higher, in those cases during recovery, we can see it. But again, not a very common finding.
Okay. Another question is, what is the principle of using Lasota via the parental route in the outbreak farm with high mortality?
And now here, the vaccine is not going to do anything for production of antibodies because you know the live vaccine will take at least 7 days to start the production of antibodies and 14 days to complete it. By the time the flock will be completely gone, no antibodies, no birds. But why we are giving it, there is something called as interferons. Once the virus attacks, then when you inject this live Lasota virus, there is a structure called as interferons which is formed in the body, and they will attack or attach with the field virus. They will not allow the field virus to attach to the host cells, and thereby they will prevent further spread of the vaccine infection. So whatever birds are already heavily infected, they will die. But wherever the birds are slightly infected or not infected, these interferons will form the binding with field virus, and they will not be able to attach to the host cells. So it is called a phenomenon of interference. They will interfere with the action of the virus. It is nothing to do with the antibody production.
Another question is, what is the reason behind the use of Lasota in ND instead of F1 or B1?
No, I couldn't get this. This is a confusing question.
Okay. What is the reason behind the use of Lasota instead of F1 or B1?
But where did Lasota? Because I have never said use Lasota instead of for this thing during injection.
Yeah.
Okay. No, F1 and B1, as I said, they are having very low ICPI values and they are much milder. So in case of field virus, if you inject them, they are strong virulent viruses. And these low ICPI value antigens, these strains cannot fight this field virus. So we have to go with a higher one. So of course, you cannot go with R2B, which is having very high value of 1.2. But instead of just 1.15 and 0.2, we are going with Lasota, which is 0.4. which will take care of not producing the disease as well as elevating the further complications in the flock.
All right. Is there any prevention practice for AI vaccine? Is this possible to control the disease? Is a question from Dr. Manish Kumar Shah.
See, AI, we don't have any official vaccines in Nepal as well as in India. So whatever if you get from gray market, they can use it. But again, you are not very sure that the vaccine will prevent the diseases, because we cannot blame the vaccine either. They must be preparing with or following all the CGMP, everything they must be doing. But the virus specialty of AI is it keeps on mutating. There are so many permutations and combinations possible in H and N factors, hemagglutinin and neuraminidase. So there could be a number of possibilities of permutation combination. So you are not sure that what virus you get in the field is same like that of the vaccine. So it is very difficult to say that use of AI will definitely prevent the problem.
Thank you. Just a reminder to the participants who are still with us, we have a poll that is running just to collect your valuable feedback. Would appreciate it if you would just spare a few seconds of your time giving us some feedback on the poll. I know several of you have voted, but there's quite a few of you who still haven't. So my personal request is for you to kindly use the polling feature on your app or on your laptop and kindly provide us some feedback on the webinar. In the meantime, a couple of questions here again. What are the major institutes in India for ND virus sequencing is one of the questions that have come in.
What's that?
Yeah, I'll repeat the question. What are the major institutes in India for ND virus sequencing?
This actually Venkateswara Hatcheries has got Poultry Diagnostic and Research Center. They can do it. Similarly, Suvarna Group has also got one of their very good laboratories at Udumalpet in Tamil Nadu. They also have that facility as far as poultry is concerned. But NIV, National Institute of Virology, they can do sequencing for all the viruses of humans as well as animals. They can do it. It is in Pune, Puldest Institute. Earlier it was called as VRC, Virus Research Center. Now it is National Institute of Virology, wherein this COVID virus is also studying. So that is there. But as far as our poultry firms are concerned, Venky's has got near Pune, Poultry Diagnostic and Research Center. And Suvarna has got in Tamil Nadu, Udumalpet. They have got the facility of sequencing.
Thank you so much. How often chances are there to get ND in vaccinated flocks?
I told you there are a number of reasons for vaccination failure, but to name a few, one thing would be, of course, administration technique. If the cold chain is broken or the vaccine, some compromise is done in the number of doses, or while, as I said, while putting the drop in the eyes, you are immediately releasing the chick, the vaccine is going outside. Those are there. Plus, if the feed is having some problems, like unbalanced feed, more of a mycotoxin, then what you say, more of less of the required trace minerals. That is, they put of course mineral mixture, but there may be little of imbalance here and there. So imbalanced feed and toxicity, mycotoxin, this is main in the case of feed. Then in case of management, anything putting on the stress on the birds is a major thing. As I told you, stress on the birds will lead to immunosuppression, and immunosuppressed birds cannot elicit good vaccine response. And then as far as environment is concerned, if there is sudden change in the temperatures or continuous rains, that also puts a lot of stress on the birds. There will be again vaccination failure. So these are certain factors. Even in vitamin D3 also I read somewhere that if your feed is having higher mycotoxin level, vitamin D3 dose should be increased. And vitamin D is very important factor in production of antibodies against any viruses in humans as well as in poultry. So if vitamin D is optimum, like we say now, that I think your vitamin D of it is a top up than what they are using already in the feed premixes. So even though you are having that regular recommended 3,000 units per kg, etc. And if you are having mycotoxin level high, naturally the digestibility is low. So there is secondary deficiency, and then in such cases also the vaccines will fail.
Thank you very much. I think we're just about at the end of our session today. If Mr. Arur is with us, I'd like to I'd like to sort of invite Mr. Arur if he's there. I know he's facing some connection problems, but Mr. Arur, if you can hear me, it would be lovely if you can give your closing remarks.
In fact, it's been such a early session right from the beginning, with some immunosuppression from the what you call the connectivity in the internet. Great session. I must thank first the Dr. Ruklikar for having come here and taken, come to the seminar and taken a lot of time. Thank you very much. I thank gave a very valuable information on alpha D3, and thanks to Dr. Ruklikar.
I believe we are continuing to face some difficulties. I think with the cyclone hitting parts of Goa, where Mr. Arur is present, I think there's been a complete wipeout of network. Let's hope he's able to join us back. Mr. Arur, are you with us?
Yeah, I am with you.
Okay.
The other place that the for holding us up, one of the things that I must congratulate is the Kandivet field staff who have taken a lot of effort in inviting all of you, and the grand gathering that we have had, more than what we expected, is really appreciated. Especially Mr. Amit Kumar Jha and his team have taken a lot of efforts. Thank you all. I hope we have many more, as you must have heard from Prashant, that we are a more
Okay. I think what Mr. Arur is saying is he truly appreciates all of you all for spending time, giving us the opportunity to host you all. Special thanks to Dr. Ruklikar. Thank you, sir, for joining us and sparing your very valuable feedback, and of course, Dr. Sadbhai, Amit Kumar Jha. I mean, thank you so much for getting this organized, and special thanks to the entire team. Amit, thank you so much. I've just unmuted you. So if you want to say a few words to your participants, please feel free to do that.
Thanks, Doctor. Very nice presentation.
Thank you. So I will make this recording available.
For all the trouble.
Okay, so I think thank you so much. We'll draw this to a close. I will share this recording with everybody. And I think we'll email the link to all of our participants. And good luck, stay safe, and we will stay in touch. Thank you specifically to Dr. Ruklikar. Thank you very much.
Alura and all the Alura.
You're most welcome, Amit. You're most welcome. Thank you very much, and have a pleasant day. Bye-bye.
Okay, Prashant, thanks a lot for giving opportunity. It was a really
our pleasure to have you, sir. Our pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you and bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ruklikar.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.